Coming out can be quite a significant and liberating experience. But at the same time, it can also be a little bit scary and a little intimidating. When I first came out to my friends and family, it was a little bit difficult for me because I had no information or resources that could assist me in helping me talk to my friends and family and what to say and what to do. And looking back on it now, I wish I had some guidance about how to tell the people, especially those that were closest to me. So I thought I'd make this video to give you some tips and guidance as to how you could go about coming out to your friends and family, and more specifically, how you could come out as trans. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this. Okay, let's get into it. So right off the bat, I just wanted to contextualize this conversation by saying that coming out is a profoundly and deeply personal process. This process is all about you. There are no right or wrong ways to do this. If you're more comfortable coming out publicly on social media, that's perfectly fine. If you'd rather have a face-to-face conversation with somebody or a group of people, that's perfectly okay. If you want to come out by texting somebody a message or writing a letter, this is completely your narrative and nobody should be taking ownership of that except for yourself. While the process may be intimidating and a little bit scary, you should be doing this on your own time when you are ready in your own space. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with taking your time. If you feel that now is the right time to come out, then now is the right time for you. If you want to wait a little bit longer, that's also fine. It's also important to keep in mind that sometimes the notion of coming out can be problematic because it implies that there is something that you need to tell somebody, it implies there's something that you owe somebody, it implies sometimes that this is something that you need to disclose. Again, this is your own narrative and all the decisions are really up to you. Nobody should be telling you or expecting you to disclose anything to them. And so really this is in your own space, in your own time, if it's a decision that you want to make. So if you feel that coming out is something that's not necessarily important to you, that's perfectly legitimate and that is a choice that should be respected. Okay, so now that we've got that little bit of context out of the way, let's talk about how you could potentially tell your friends and family and what could potentially work for you. So I trained as a professional actress in theatre and performance. And one of the things that I can't stress enough is the power of rehearsal. So rehearsal can be a valuable tool for you in doing a number of things. And one of those things is building confidence in what it is that you're wanting to say. Okay, so this doesn't mean that you necessarily have to write out an entire script, memorize it, practice how you're going to deliver it, put on the lights, put on the show. I mean, you could if you really wanted to. So sometimes when we have ideas in our heads, they make perfect sense to us. And then suddenly when you say it out loud, it comes out completely different. And then you go, oops, I didn't mean to say that. Or that's not what I meant to say. And so sometimes a lot of our fear and anxiety comes from the fact that we have to vocalize our thoughts. And that can be really, really scary. And so rehearsal is going to afford you an opportunity to practice and vocalize the thoughts that are in your head. So that when you do speak, it comes across clearly and concisely. And so that you don't get frustrated and scared and intimidated by speaking to somebody. And so this brings us to the next point. Know your audience. When we come out to people close to us, we're not only telling them something deeply, profoundly personal about ourselves, but we are also asking them for their support. When you do come out to someone about your sexual orientation or your gender identity, they may have some questions for you, and so you might need to be prepared to help them along and help them to understand your position. This may involve you having to give them information about what sexuality means. This may involve you giving them information about what gender identity means. And so what you are doing is trying to bring the person into a space of understanding, not just about the information, but also about how you feel personally in your context. So with that in mind, you might want to come out to the easiest people first. And this can help you build your confidence and take some of that pressure off. So you might want to come out to just one person. Just one. Someone that you know where it's going to be easy. So this can be somebody like your best friend or your partner. On the flip side, some people find coming out to people who are close to them a little bit too intimate and a little bit too intimidating. If that's the case, maybe you can come out to somebody that you're not really close with, somebody who is far out in your circle. But again, somebody who is going to be an easy conversation with, and you will know who the right person is for you. So it's important to bear in mind who you are talking to. So the nature of your relationship to the person is going to contextualize how you interact with them, is going to contextualize how you talk to them. And so for the same reason that you might not want to say certain things to your parents, you might feel comfortable having a particular type of conversation with your best friend or your partner. I also bring up the notion about knowing who it is that you're talking to, or knowing your audience, because at the center of you telling somebody something deeply personal about yourself is the notion of safety. So sometimes having these conversations with friends or family can be a very, very difficult process, because some people are not as open and not as accepting. Sometimes we're pleasantly surprised about how we think a particular conversation is going to go, and it really doesn't end up going that way, and that's great. So we do have a sense about who in our circles, whether it be friends or family, may potentially have a tendency to be either homophobic or transphobic. So one of the things that you want to keep in mind is always to make sure that you are safe at all times. And sometimes it is quite unfortunate and sad that people do respond to you coming out and living your truth with fear and anxiety and hostility. So if you are going to have a conversation with such a person, you must make sure that you are safe. So coming out to your parents or family members might be a little bit tricky, particularly if we know that they might not respond favorably to what we're going to tell them. And so perhaps you'd have to think a little bit more carefully about how you would go about telling them. So one of the things that you could potentially do is slide the notion of sexuality or gender expression or identity into a random conversation. And from that you could potentially gauge how they may potentially react. Again, in the notion of rehearsal, this may also facilitate the process as to when you actually do want to tell them that they are already primed and been introduced to information that isn't so scary and jarring for them. So if you know your parents or your family is not necessarily going to take it very well, you might not want to come out in a public setting, like let's say at a family gathering. So maybe you'd rather want to have that kind of conversation in a closed or more intimate space. So if you are feeling a little bit intimidated by doing this on your own, there is no reason why you can't take somebody with you to help facilitate that process and have a conversation with both them and your family at the same time. And that person can support you in that process. So this is also going to act as a safety buffer for you in case you need it. So for those who may be in a relationship with a partner, it's important to bear in mind that you do in fact have a relationship with the person and you have nurtured and grown this relationship together. Coming out as trans may potentially affect the dynamic of your relationship because the partner and yourself are going to have to adjust to your new way of being. And so this also affords your relationship a number of opportunities to get to know one another on a different basis and to get to know more aspects of one another. And also affords you an opportunity to potentially fall in love with that person all over again. And so you're both traversing a relationship together, and so there has to be room for feelings and there has to be room for conversation and for those feelings to be aired within that conversation within a safe space. And so one of the considerations that you might want to think about is that both parties in the relationship must be deliberate and purposeful in pursuing that romantic relationship and getting to know one another, both as individuals and deciding what it is that you enjoy as a couple moving forward. And so to broaden the notion of relationships and responsibilities, not just within the context of an intimate relationship, but to those of friends and family, talking about things and communication is absolutely essential in communicating openly and honestly and holding space for one another when one of us is not able to do so. So if you bear this in mind and put it into practice, this is really going to help strengthen your relationships with your intimate partners or with your friends or with your family. And so finally, don't be afraid to reach out if you are struggling or you need assistance in any kind of way. This can be a really intimidating process for some people, and so sometimes we do require assistance, and there's nothing wrong with that. And so you can reach out to your local LGBT organizations who are always more than happy to assist. I will drop a link below for local South African trans and LGBT organizations that you could potentially get in touch with. Also reach out to other trans people that you may know. It might not necessarily be face to face, you might not know them personally, but you can always find them on social media. There are always people around who are willing to assist you if you need help, or even if you just want to have a conversation. One of the things I wish I had heard when I was first coming out and struggling with my identity and trying to tell people about who I am and how I felt, I wish somebody had told me that it was going to be okay, that it was going to get better. And I can tell you and I can promise you that it does get better. And you have the most amazing life ahead of you. You don't even realize it yet. I really hope this video was helpful. If you enjoyed the content, remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao!